Hi.
Alright, hello guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are brand new here, my name is Nikki and this is my book nook. Y'all, today we are talking about Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. This is the second book in the Bellinger Sisters series and also the follow-up to It Happened One Summer. This book seriously took book talk and just book social media by storm last year. It was seriously one of the most talked about ones, which I completely understand. I made a video review of this myself about 6 months ago and ranted and raved about how much I loved it. It is a Schitt's Creek inspired rom-com and it was just done so well. I literally recommend it to everyone still to this day. It's just so good, which makes it safe to say that Hook, Line, and Sinker, being the continuation of this story in this world, was definitely one of my absolute most anticipated reads of 2022. And I'm just gonna come right out and say, I was not disappointed. I have a lot of things to say in this video, but one thing I wanna start right off saying is, I'm gonna do like a spoiler-free synopsis of this book, but if you have not yet read It Happened One Summer, I'm gonna kind of be talking about them together a lot, or comparing them, referring to It Happened One Summer while talking about this book. So if you haven't read this book, you might be a little confused as we talk through it, and honestly, I just really recommend going and reading this book first, as much as it really isn't necessary because this is a standalone. Having the background and the knowledge from this book and the introduction of like the setting and all the characters will really help you once getting into this one. And always, I just say, follow what the author does. They know what they're doing. They write their books in the order they intend you to read them. So read it, but yeah, just wanted to put that little disclaimer out there. Let's just get into it. So for a little refresher, in It Happened One Summer, we meet the Bellinger sisters, Piper and Hannah. Piper is this party girl, this socialite that is super well known. She's kind of like a Kardashian basically in this world. And at the start of this story, she ends up getting in a public scandal. She throws this huge party, it's all over the news. She ends up in jail, and basically as punishment, her stepfather tells her that he's going to send her to the town that her father grew up in. It's this little fishing town in Washington, and she's gonna have to learn to take responsibility, be there on her own. He's basically cutting her off, and she's going to have to learn what it's like to be an adult and have responsibilities. And yeah, she's basically forced to go there, and her sister Hannah, who is the exact polar opposite of her, agrees to go with Piper, knowing that there's no way she can totally be on her own, and she would never do that to her. Of course, if you've read this story, you know upon Hannah and Piper getting to Westport, Washington, they quickly meet Brendan, who is this fisherman that has grown up there his entire life, and quickly thereafter they end up meeting his best friend and one of his fellow fishermen on his crew, Fox. The reason I'm going through this is because this story focuses on Hannah and Fox particularly. Piper, as we have said, is total rich girl. Like, she is the Alexis Rose of this story. Never has had a responsibility, never has had really many dreams or aspirations. She just wants to party, she just wants to have a good time. Hannah, on the other hand, is the polar opposite of Piper. She has always had big dreams, aspirations, goals. Even though she comes from a lot of money and her family is very rich, she's never wanted that attachment to her name. She's never been present on social media. She has a passion for music that is so deep, and it is really her dream to do music within movies. Their stepfather in the story is a big movie producer, but she never wanted to use his name to climb up in Hollywood. She wanted to quite literally start at the bottom and, you know, be an assistant and try to wiggle her way into the music side of movies, into creating the score, creating the movie soundtrack. Like, that's what she wants to do. So at the end of It Happened One Summer, if you've read this, you obviously know, spoiler alert, Piper ends up staying in Westport. Hannah ends up going back to LA because that is where her job and her career is. So we see Hannah at the start of the story back in LA, and even though she's left Westport behind, she hasn't left it behind altogether because she's still having a very on and off texting relationship with Fox, who is Brendan's best friend that we meet in the first story. We very briefly see Hannah and Fox together in It Happened One Summer. It's really just whenever they go to that record convention, whenever Brendan and Piper are off shopping. I can't remember what they're doing at this moment. It doesn't matter. But they have a tiny little moment together. Their initial meeting is really funny because like Hannah is basically like yelling at Brendan, putting him in his place, which nobody ever does. So Hannah immediately catches Fox's eye, but then, you know, they end up going to this record convention together. He ends up learning about her love of music. They kind of become friendly with one another, but it never goes past that because Brendan gives Fox a very strict warning to stay far away from Hannah because Fox is known as a playboy. He has a reputation. He doesn't commit to anyone. He hooks up with girls like every night of the week. Like, he is not a guy you settle down with. And Brendan, knowing that Hannah is Piper's sister and knowing that she's, you know, a good girl, doesn't want Fox mixed up with her. And that's kind of where their relationship is left. They're just kind of friendly with one another. They've remained texting while they're apart, but at the beginning of this story, Hannah is working on a movie with this director, Sergey, which we hear about briefly, and it happened one summer. He's this director that she's been crushing on for well over a year now, but hasn't had the courage to really like let her feelings be known, and she's just kind of navigating Hollywood. Again, she's working as a personal assistant, but her real passion is in music. But she's determined to put in all the dirty work necessary to get what she wants, but she does have a hard time speaking up for herself. She does want these things, but she's not the most confident in what she wants. She's not the most willing to experience conflict or put herself out there, not quite in the way that Piper does, because again, they're just really polar opposites. Hannah mentions a lot in this book that like Piper is main character, like gives off main character energy, where she has always been like supporting character. She's always there to support people. She always puts other people before her, but she never really stops and talks about what she wants or puts what she wants first. So just an interesting thing about Hannah, learning her character and learning just how different she is from Piper. But basically, while she's filming this movie in LA, they are kind of realizing, the director is realizing that the setting is totally wrong. It just doesn't work. The city backdrop doesn't flow with the story, and he wants something that's a lot more like indie, and just, he has this vision, and he kind of starts to explain it, and a light bulb goes off in Hannah's head, and she's like, I know exactly the place. It's Westport. We're going back to Westport, baby. So she ends up convincing Sergey, and they're gonna go back to Westport to film this movie, which is great because that means that Hannah can see her good old sister Piper and her brother-in-law Brendan. It'll be a great time. But oh yeah, there's also someone else in Westport. Fox is there, and it just so happens that Fox has an open guest room while Brendan and Piper currently do not, because Brendan's parents are gonna be staying there while Hannah is filming this movie. So yep, you guessed it, forced proximity. My favorite, everything I need. Yeah, Hannah ends up living with Fox, agreeing to live with Fox for these few weeks that the movie is being filmed. Fox is beyond excited about it, but also this is a rough situation, right? Because he's feeling things for Hannah. He cannot deny his attraction to her, but they have become friends, and Fox doesn't have girlfriends, has never had girlfriends, does not get close to people because he lives up to his reputation. He's always been a guy that just, you know, has one night stands and leaves it at that, and is always upfront because he just doesn't feel like he's worth anything more, doesn't feel that he can offer anything more. His dad was kind of a deadbeat, left his mom behind, and that's the reputation that his family has in this town, and he's just kind of rolled with it. You know, he's a good looking guy and he does get all the girls he wants, and he just knows that he can't offer them anything more. So he's not gonna put Hannah in jeopardy of that as much as he may want it. And you know, Hannah is aware of this reputation as well, but Hannah has a very strong head on her shoulders and really doesn't, it's funny, it's like she doesn't care what people think about other people. Like, she's so not judgmental, but she does obviously care what people think about her, in the sense of like, she's not super confident and isn't super willing to speak up and like what she wants and like her career goals. But like when it comes to her friends and the people around her, like she's like fiercely loyal and like could not care less what Fox's reputation is. Like, she's, you know, all that matters is what you truly know about yourself and what the people close to you think of you, and that's how she feels about the whole situation. So she's like not at all embarrassed of him, but again, she still has this feeling of like, we're friends. He's my sister's or my brother-in-law's best friend. This is a complicated situation. I live in LA, he lives here. What are we gonna do? And as you can tell, as you can guess, I mean, there's a lot of stories that are like this, and you know, tensions rise, angst builds, like things happen, but this is just one of those stories that, yes, it's very tense, it's very spicy when things ultimately do happen after a very long, drawn-out slow burn. It is incredible, but there really is a deeper story to this, just like a lot of Tessa Bailey's stories, just about like knowing your self-worth and like fighting for what you want and allowing yourself happiness and knowing what you deserve and just allowing yourself to have what you deserve. Like, there's just so much to Fox's character and so much to Hannah. Like, Hannah truly I love so much. Like, I think her character is so strong and so interesting and just like so different. I just loved her, I loved him, I loved them together. Like, there were obviously parts of the story that were very frustrating to read. It's always frustrating when people, like, the real conflict in stories is just people not allowing themselves to like be happy because they don't believe in themselves or they don't think they're good enough. Like, that's always really frustrating to read, but honestly, it's really realistic. There's a lot of people that hold themselves back from things in life or just convince themselves that they don't deserve something or that they're not good enough, and that's why they don't allow themselves happiness. So it's really like not far off from things that could happen in real life. Just kind of comparing the two stories, I think I know. I don't know. I loved It Happened One Summer. I think overall the story of this book was better, more well-rounded. I think Piper's story of truly coming from like having everything to having just about nothing and learning the important things in life of like having people around you that really care, being a part of a community, like seeing her character arc and development and her relationship with Brendan was just so good, and like seeing the things that they gave each other, like what they brought out in each other. It was just such a good, incredible, well-rounded story. I have like a hard time believing this is like a singular book, because seriously, like if you've watched Schitt's Creek, like the entire character arc and that entire just story of all those like 5 or 6 seasons, whatever it was, she somehow managed to like, in this, it's not exactly like the show, so don't feel like it is, it's not, but you got to see like all of that wrapped up in one beautiful package in this book, and it just was so well done. So I think like the story aspect of It Happened One Summer is more polished and just mwah, chef's kiss. But I have to say, I enjoyed Hannah's character more, I think, than I did Piper. Like, I think Hannah was just really different than a lot of girls that I normally read in rom-coms. Like, she just had a really strong head on her shoulders, and she was stubborn, and she just knows how to read people and knows what she wants, and she's just willing to freaking fight for what she wants, and she's not willing to let those around her, I keep saying it, but like, get anything less than they deserve, and she's gonna pound it into their heads until they know that she loves them. And I just really liked her, and I really liked Fox's development in this as well. I've seen a lot of mixed reviews on this book. I really have. People were getting arcs of this book like so long ago, like literally right as I was reading this book, people were getting arcs of this. So I've been seeing like on the timeline for a while now, people either really loving it, but a lot of people really not liking it. And I did not look into those reviews because I wanted to be able to form them for myself. But just in the past like week, some things that I have seen here and there, a lot of people didn't like that this book was like a lot about kind of like slut shaming Fox, because that's really his conflict in this book, is he's always had this reputation of being like a player and like a womanizer, and he just hooks up with girls, and it's pointed out a lot in this book, and like everyone in the town gives him that reputation, like he's had it his whole life, and it's something that's constantly talked about. And a lot of people didn't like that aspect of it, like they felt like it was a very like slut-shamey book, but I found it to be really interesting. And I think it's like, but the thing about it too is it's like, it's not slut-shaming, it's like going against slut-shaming. It's showing that that's like not right. And it was especially interesting because it was a guy. Like, normally when we see that in media, a girl is being slut shamed, right? And we know that that's not okay, like fundamentally, but you never stop and think about that when it comes to a guy and how that might affect a guy and how that might get inside his head over time and make him question his value and his self-worth. Like, we never really talk about that. And guys have feelings just the same as girls do, you know? And if something is pounded into their head over and over, or they're meant to think that they're worth less, like, it's gonna eventually get to them too. And I think it was really, really interesting to see that in this story. Like, again, I think there's tons of stories out there of girls that have rough pasts or rough family lives and grew up, you know, jumping from guy to guy, getting involved in bad stuff, and they have that character arc of, no, you're worth so much more than that, and I don't care about your past. And like, we see that all the time for girls in books, and we love that. So I think a guy should be allowed to have that same sort of character arc, and I think it was done really well, and I think it was really beautiful in the end. And I never ever cry in books. Like, it takes a lot for me, but reading the epilogue of this, like when everything kind of tied up together with the two stories, I got teary-eyed. Like, I shed a tear or two. Like, it just was really freaking cute, and like, I was just so happy to see everything just all happy and wrapped up together in one beautiful bow. So yeah, I freaking loved this book. I literally flew through it in one day. I was so happy with it, not disappointed in the slightest. It totally, like, it was so good because it continued this world, but it was a very different story, and we still got like glimpses of Piper and Brendan, but it really wasn't like a continuation. Like, their story was wrapped up, done. We see, you know, happiness now, and we moved on to Hannah and Fox, and it was like the perfect balance of staying in the world but telling a new story and telling a different story with very different characters. And I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. I would love to hear y'all's thoughts because, like I said, it seems to be a controversial book. People either love it or they hate it. But yeah, tell me all the things in the comments. I am very excited to see what Tessa Bailey does next. I know she has a book coming out that's like about a bounty hunter and like a first grade teacher or something. That one looks very interesting. I might check it out, we'll see. But yeah, that is it for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye.